When we bought the house at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, I imagined I was buying a little slice of peace. It was October. The maple out front was a bonfire of oranges and reds, and the porch had just enough room for a chair and a mug of coffee. The realtor said the HOA was light touch, mostly landscaping rules, no boats in the driveway, keep your trash cans out of sight. I'm the kind of person who alphabetizes spices. I wasn't sweating it. My wife, Jenna, and I had been saving for years. We wanted space for our dog, Harper, and maybe, if we were lucky in a couple of years, a nursery. The first morning in the new place, I walked the block like a tourist, nodding at joggers, waving at a guy walking two schnauzers. There was one house I noticed because the lawn looked like a golf course. Perfect stripes, no stray clover, edges sharp enough to cut your ankle. The woman kneeling at the flower bed looked up as I passed, squinting. She didn't wave. I thought maybe she hadn't seen me. 2 days later, our first HOA notice arrived in the mailbox. Jenna found it while we were still unpacking the kitchen, standing among open boxes in a nest of bubble wrap. "Already," she said, laughing, tearing at the envelope with a butter knife. "What is it? A welcome basket of rules?" It wasn't. It was a courtesy reminder that trash cans must not be visible from the street except on collection day. It came with a grainy printed photo of our curb, taken at 6:42 a.m. You could see our blue recycling bin sitting crooked by the driveway. The lid popped like a mouth mid-yawn. "I literally put that there this morning," I said. "Pickup is at 7. "Maybe a board member drove by early," Jenna offered, but her smile faltered. The angle of the photo suggested someone standing in front of our house, not a drive-by. I shrugged it off. We complied. On collection days, I waited until I heard the rattling truck at the end of the street, then hustled the cans out. We tucked them behind the fence afterward, lined up like soldiers. It felt a little silly, but I told myself we were doing what we'd agreed to when we bought in. A week later, the next letter arrived. Dead patches in lawn must be reseeded within 15 days. The photo this time was of 2 circles of dirt near the sidewalk. They were from the mover's dolly that had sat in the grass, I guess, while they were wrestling our couch through the door. I bought seed and a sprinkler. I spent a Saturday bent over the ground, tamping soil with the flat of my hand, trying to erase the marks our arrival had made. That same afternoon, Harper barked at the fence. I peeked through the slats and saw the woman from the perfect lawn standing at the edge of her yard, arms folded. "Is that your sprinkler?" she called without hello. "Yeah," I said, "just reseeding." "You'll need a water permit if you're going to run it daily," she said. "We're in a conservation period." "I'm just doing 5 minutes," I said, glancing at the dial like I was being quizzed. "Every other day." She stared like she was trying to read a tell on my face. "Make sure it doesn't hit the sidewalk," she said, and turned away. Inside, Jenna was unpacking glassware. "Who was that?" she asked. "Our neighbor," I said, and then, because it felt true, added, "I think." Her name, as I learned from Nextdoor.com and the HOA meeting notes, was Arlene. She lived 2 houses down, with the Schnauzer's guy wedged between us. According to the archive minutes, Arlene had served on the HOA board for 7 years, then stepped down to focus on her garden club commitments, which felt like an evasive way to say she'd been on the board longer than most children spend in elementary school. In every photo, she wore a visor. In every photo, she looked like the visor hurt her. For a while, the notices were minor and predictable, the way a dripping faucet is predictable. Garage door must be closed when not in direct use. We'd left it open while sorting tools. Holiday lights must be removed within 2 weeks of holiday. It was the end of October, and I hadn't even plugged them in. I'd strung a single strand of orange bulbs on the porch rail because it made Jenna smile. Each letter had a date stamp and a photo. The photos were crisp and a little close. Once I could see the reflection of our front bay window in the dark curvature of a car side mirror parked across the street. It wasn't until the 4th notice, unapproved vehicle parked overnight, that the pit in my stomach got a name. Targeted. The photo showed a white pickup in front of our house. Problem was, neither of us owns a white pickup. There had been one in the cul-de-sac the night before, contractors working on the Williams roof, but this letter was addressed to us with a fine of $50 assessed. When I called the management company, a woman named Margot put me on hold for so long I listened to the entire flute solo of a song called Sunset Over Boca. When she came back, she said the report came from a resident observer, but wouldn't tell me who. We protect their privacy, she said, as if this was witness protection and not suburban tattling. I can prove it wasn't our car, I said. We have a black hatchback and a gray sedan. You have our vehicle registrations on file. Then send photos, she said. We'll review at the next board meeting. I said bad words after I hung up. Harper put her ears back like she thought I was yelling at her. I knelt and scratched her chest. Not you, I said. Never you. At the board meeting, the pickup fine was dismissed after I showed time-stamped photos of our driveway and a video clip from our doorbell camera. That should have made me feel better. Instead, as I watched the board members exchange glances, polite, tight, something in me wilted. They weren't relieved I'd clarified. They were annoyed I'd challenged the process. After the meeting, in the parking lot, Arlene materialized beside my shoulder like an algebra problem. Some people move to communities like ours and think the rules don't apply to them, she said, voice light but edged. The visor was on even though the sun had been down for an hour. I think the rules are fine, I said carefully. I just want them enforced fairly. Fairly, she repeated, rolling the word around like a hard candy. Of course. Then she smiled, a neat baring of teeth. Welcome to the neighborhood. That night, I set the doorbell camera to notify my phone whenever it detected motion. This was partly paranoia and partly curiosity. Who was taking these pictures of my house at weird hours? At 11:23 p.m., my phone buzzed. The footage showed a figure in a windbreaker walking slowly along the sidewalk, pausing in front of our yard, then our driveway, then moving on. The person didn't do anything, just cataloged. The camera couldn't capture a face under the visor's shadow, but the height, the shape, it could have been anyone. I didn't sleep much. The thing I kept coming back to wasn't the money or even the inconvenience. It was the feeling of being watched. There's a kind of fatigue that sets in when you sense your life is subject to someone else's ledger. I brushed my teeth the next morning and caught myself closing the bathroom blinds, even though our window faces the backyard. The crescendo came 2 weeks later with a letter thicker than the others. The envelope had weight to it that felt performative, like it wanted me anxious before I even saw what was inside. It was a formal violation notice. Multiple reports of late-night gatherings causing noise disturbance, unauthorized short-term rental activity, and improper exterior modification. Downspout unapproved. Each alleged violation carried a fine. The total at the bottom made my stomach plummet. There were photos this time, too. The glow of our living room window at 1:14 a.m., a blurry shape of someone dragging a suitcase up our driveway, a close-up of our downspout where a small extension pipe diverted water away from the foundation. We don't throw parties. Jenna is a nurse who leaves for her shift at 6 a.m. We don't rent our home. We barely have guest towels. The suitcase? It could have been Jenna coming back from a weekend with her sister. The downspout. I had bought the extension at the hardware store because rainwater was pooling near the porch. I didn't know I needed permission to keep water out of the crawl space. I took the packet to the kitchen table and spread it out like war maps. I called Margot again, and she repeated the same script. Submit a rebuttal, wait for the board. While we waited, letters kept coming. Once, when Jenna and I were baking on a Saturday afternoon, Harper barked and Jenna peered through the peephole. She's outside, she whispered. Arlene, she's taking a picture of our porch. I stepped out and waved. Arlene didn't wave back. She lifted her phone, clicked another photo, and walked briskly away as if I'd been the rude one. It would have been easy to go nuclear, march door to door with a petition, post the camera footage on Nextdoor, hire a lawyer. But the thing about living in a cul-de-sac is that you have to drive past everyone twice, on your way out and on your way home. I wanted to try humane first. The next evening, I walked to Arlene's house with a plate of brownies. Jenna thought it was corny, but she also knows this is my way. Try kindness until it fails. Arlene answered the door halfway, the chain still on. The smell of lemon cleaner drifted out. Hi, I said. I'm across the street. I just wanted to introduce myself properly and, start on the right foot. Her eyes flicked to the brownies, then to my face. We've met, she said, no chain slackening. Sort of, I said and smiled. Listen, We've gotten some notices, and there seems to be a misunderstanding. We don't do short-term rentals. My wife's a nurse. I'm boring. And the downspout is just... She closed the door enough that the chain tapped once. When she opened it again, barely, her voice was flat. Rules are rules. Some of us care about standards. So do I said, still stupidly holding the brownies between us like a peace treaty. Her eyes slid to them again. I can't have sugar, she said, and shut the door. The plate got heavy in my hands on the walk home. I should have been angry. Instead, I felt something closer to dread. People like Arlene don't get full-on conflict. They graze. 2 mornings later, I woke to a knock at 6:15 a.m. I stumbled to the door in gym shorts and a t-shirt to find 2 board members, Ray and Priya, standing grimly with clipboards. Routine inspection, Priya said, not sounding sorry at all about the hour. They pointed at things. The porch light fixture wasn't in the approved style. Our mailbox had a slight tilt. Ray measured the height of our grass like he was crafting a coffin. I followed them to the sidewalk where the curb meets our driveway. A smear of mud sat there like a bruise. Priya crouched and frowned. Also, she said, tapping her phone screen, we received reports that you were operating a generator past quiet hours. We don't own a generator, I said. Jenna works mornings. I go to bed at 10. Ray's forehead creased. That's odd, he muttered, showing me his phone. There in the community thread the board uses for reports was a photo of a small generator, red and black, humming beside a garage. Except the garage wasn't ours. The siding was a slightly different beige. The house number in the corner of the frame, half cut off, looked like a 9, not our 7. Whose garage is that? I asked quietly. Behind us, a visor's shadow fell across the sidewalk. A voice said, bright as a bell, if you're looking for patterns, I'd start at their place. I turned. Arlene stood at the curb with a leashed schnauzer and a phone ready in her free hand, as if the universe might do something worth documenting at any second. The dog looked at me with the same accusing eyes as its owner. Ray and Priya exchanged a glance, the same polite, tight one from the meeting, then looked back at me. We'll review everything, Priya said. But if the reports continue, there will be consequences. What consequences, I wanted to ask. More fines? Liens? A scarlet letter on our door? But the visor moved, and I found I didn't want to argue in front of Arlene. Not there on the sidewalk where her satisfaction would soak into the concrete. They left. I stood there with my bare feet going numb on the autumn cold porch. Jenna came to the doorway, sleepy, concerned. What happened? I was about to say nothing when my phone buzzed. A motion alert from the doorbell camera, time-stamped 3:12 a.m. I tapped it. The video loaded. A figure in a windbreaker, visor low, stepping onto our porch in the dead of night, crouching by our downspout with a small tool in hand, adjusting something. When the figure straightened and turned toward the camera, the brim lifted just enough to catch the face in the porch light's glow. It was Arlene. There was no mistaking it. The camera caught her perfectly for half a second. Those sharp cheekbones, that severe mouth, that same goddamn visor, even though it was 3 a.m. She crouched by our downspout, twisting the little pipe extension I'd installed. When she stood, she took a photo, glanced toward the street, and walked off like it was nothing. I just stood there in the kitchen, staring at my phone. The timestamp, the image. It was all so absurd that for a moment, I wondered if I was dreaming. Then I played the clip again, and my stomach turned cold. Jenna, I called softly. She came into the room still half asleep, hair messy, wrapped in a robe. What? I handed her the phone. She watched the clip, blinked twice, then looked up at me. What the hell is she doing? Looks like she's sabotaging our downspout, I said, my voice flat. Jenna frowned. Why would she? And then she stopped, realization hitting her. The improper modification notice. Exactly, I said. She changed it, took a photo, then reported it. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. We just stared at the phone, the evidence looping again and again. This is harassment, Jenna said finally. Actual harassment. I nodded. We're not ignoring this anymore. That morning, after she left for her shift, I compiled everything. Every letter, every photo, every absurd violation. I exported the doorbell clip, made a folder, and wrote a summary timeline like I was preparing for court. I sent it all to the HOA management company and CC'd the board. The subject line was simple: evidence of harassment and falsified reports by resident Arlene M. Hit send at 7:12 a.m. By 9:30, my phone started ringing. Margot from the HOA office sounded nervous, like she was choosing every word with tweezers. "We received your email, Mr. Landry," she said. "That's quite a serious accusation." "It's not an accusation," I said. "It's a recording." "Yes, I saw the video," she said quickly. "The board will need to review this privately. In the meantime, I'd advise not contacting the other party directly." "You mean Arlene?" I said. "Yes. Just let the process play out." I almost laughed. "The same process that fined me for owning a non-existent truck?" Silence. Then, "We'll be in touch after the next board meeting." The next meeting was scheduled for 10 days later. 10 long days. In that time, Arlene didn't slow down. If anything, she seemed to escalate. She started walking her dog past our house more often, 5, 6 times a day. Each time she'd slow near our mailbox or pause by the edge of our yard, pretending to check her phone while clearly looking around. Sometimes she'd even crouch like she was inspecting something. Once I saw her snap a photo of our mailbox and jot something in her little spiral notebook. Jenna started keeping the curtains closed. I installed another camera, one facing the street. Harper barked constantly, agitated by the tension we were radiating. On the 4th night, someone egged our driveway. Just 2 eggs thrown low, splattering near the garage door. It could have been teenagers, but I didn't believe in coincidence anymore. I called the HOA office again and left a message. No response. The next morning, there was another envelope in our mailbox. No return address, just HOA board, written across the top in block letters. Inside was a printed notice: cease and desist from harassing or filming other residents. I read it 3 times. Then I laughed, a bitter, disbelieving sound. She'd beaten me to it. She must have seen my cameras and twisted the story, claiming I was the one stalking her. When Jenna came home that afternoon, she found me sitting at the kitchen table with the letter spread out, my hands clenched. "She flipped it on us," I said. Her face hardened. "You're kidding." I handed her the paper. "They're accusing me now." She read it, jaw tightening. No, this has gone too far. You're calling a lawyer." I didn't even argue. I spent the next morning finding a local attorney who specialized in HOA disputes. His name was Peter Holt, and he looked like the kind of man who'd been fighting this nonsense for decades. When I explained the situation, he listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting a note. When I showed him the video, his eyebrows went up. "This is good," he said. "Very good. It's rare to get something this clear." "So what do I do?" I asked. "Nothing rash," he said. "We'll file a formal complaint with the HOA for harassment and defamation. I'll also send a letter directly to Ms. M, Arlene, informing her she is not to approach your property under any circumstances. And if she ignores it, then we escalate," he said. "Civil court." It felt good to finally have someone on our side. 2 days later, the letter went out. For a brief moment, the street was quiet. I almost believed she'd finally backed off. Then on Saturday morning, I opened our mailbox to find the red flag bent sideways and a new notice sitting inside. Violation, unsanctioned legal action against a fellow resident, breach of HOA Covenant Clause 4.3. I stared at it, stunned. I didn't even know what that meant. Was that a real rule? Could they actually fine me for hiring a lawyer? Jenna came out with her coffee and froze when she saw my face. "What now?" I handed her the paper. She read it, then said softly, "She's on the board again." "What?" "Look at the signature," she said, pointing. And there it was. Board member, Arlene M. My hand started shaking. She put herself back on the board? "She must have been re-elected or reinstated," Jenna said, horrified. "No wonder the HOA's letting her get away with this." That night I went out to check the mail again, just to make sure no more surprises had arrived. As I crossed the yard, I heard footsteps behind me. When I turned, Arlene was standing at the edge of her driveway, arms crossed, visor glinting under the streetlight. "You know," she said, "this neighborhood was peaceful before you moved in." I took a breath, tried to stay calm. "You've been trespassing on my property, Arlene. I have it on video. She smiled faintly. You shouldn't point cameras at people's homes. That's a violation. I'm protecting mine, I said. Her smile widened. Then maybe you should protect it better. I stood there frozen as she turned and walked away, her dog trotting obediently beside her. When I went inside, Jenna saw my face and asked what happened. I didn't answer right away. I just checked the door locks. The next morning, the downspout was gone, completely removed. When I stepped outside that morning, barefoot and holding my coffee, I stopped dead. The downspout, gone. The screws were still there. Little silver rings of absence where it had been attached. But the pipe itself had vanished. The grass was damp, and there were small footprints in the mud leading back toward the sidewalk. Jenna, I called. She came out in her robe, squinting against the sunlight. What's wrong? I pointed. Look. Her eyes followed my finger, then widened. You're kidding me. She actually stole it, I said flatly. She came back. I knelt, examining the ground. The footprints were small but deep, pressed in the way only an adult's weight would make. One of them had the faint outline of a dog's paw next to it. Jenna's voice trembled with anger. She's completely lost it. She's not just harassing us now, she's vandalizing our property. I stood and took a photo with my phone. Then I pulled up the doorbell camera feed from overnight. Nothing. The angle was too narrow to see that corner of the house. But our side camera might have caught it. I ran back inside, opened the footage, and scrolled through the timeline. At 4:03 a.m., there it was. Movement. A figure crouched near the porch, something metallic glinting in hand. I zoomed in. The visor, the same windbreaker. And yes, beside her, one of the schnauzers sitting obediently like an accomplice. I felt my blood boil. This time, I didn't call the HOA. I called the police. When the officer arrived, he was polite but skeptical, the way people are when they've seen too many petty neighbor disputes. I led him to the side of the house, showed him the missing downspout, then brought him inside to view the footage. He nodded slowly. Looks pretty clear, he said. You said her name's Arlene? Yes, I said. She's been harassing us for months through the HOA. We've reported it. He sighed. I'll file a report and talk to her. It's technically misdemeanor theft if it's confirmed. You might not get the piece back, but it'll put her on record. That should have comforted me. But when the patrol car pulled up across the street and I watched the officer walk up her perfect driveway, I felt a strange unease instead. Like I'd just poked something that didn't like being touched. Through the window, I saw her open the door. She spoke animatedly, gesturing toward our house. Then suddenly she started crying. I couldn't hear her words, but her performance was Oscar-worthy. Hand to chest, wiping tears, shaking her head in disbelief. The officer looked uncomfortable. After a few minutes, he nodded, jotted something down, and left without even glancing back toward me. When he came to update me, he said, She denied it, obviously. Claims she's being harassed by you. Said you've been filming her and spreading rumors online. I stared at him. You saw the video? I did, he said. But it's a civil matter unless she breaks in or threatens you directly. I'd recommend staying away from her and letting the HOA handle neighborhood disputes. I laughed bitterly. The HOA is her. He gave a sympathetic shrug. Then maybe consider legal mediation. Jenna closed the door after he left and leaned against it, arms crossed. So she gets to stalk us, steal from us, and cry her way out of trouble? Apparently, yes. That night we tried to relax, but the quiet of the house felt loaded. Every creak made Harper bark. At around midnight, a faint scraping sound outside jolted me out of bed. I looked out through the blinds, nothing but shadows in the faint orange glow of the streetlight. Then I saw it, a reflection, the faint flash of a phone screen. Someone was standing by the mailbox. I grabbed my phone, hit record on the side camera feed. The figure moved slowly up the curb, paused in front of our yard, lifted the phone again. It wasn't the visor this time. No, this person was taller, broader, a man. The next morning, we found a new violation taped to our door. Excessive exterior lighting creates glare for other residents. I almost tore it in half. They're coming onto our property in the middle of the night and we're the ones getting cited? Jenna rubbed her forehead. This is psychological warfare. She's got someone else helping her now. And she was right. Over the next week, things got worse. We'd hear footsteps at night, faint voices near the fence. Once a rock hit our front window, hard enough to crack the outer pane. No note, no confession, just the sound of glass splintering in the dark. I stopped sleeping properly. My nerves were shot. Jenna started taking alternate routes home, afraid they'd follow her. Every time a car slowed near our driveway, my stomach knotted. Finally, my lawyer, Peter Holt, said enough was enough. "We're filing for a restraining order," he said. "You've got evidence of harassment, trespassing, vandalism. The police might treat it as civil, but a judge won't." We filed. The court date was set for the following week. The morning of the hearing, I expected Arlene to show up defiant and smug. Instead, she arrived with a folder and a smirk, wearing a floral blouse and, of course, the visor. She carried herself like someone walking into a tea party. When my footage was played in court, her attorney, yes, she'd brought one, argued it was inconclusive, said the video could have been doctored or taken out of context. They even claimed I had been harassing her by excessively monitoring her home and causing her emotional distress. It was surreal. But then the judge asked a simple question. "Mrs. M, do you deny this is you in the video?" Arlene hesitated, lips parting. "I can't tell," she said weakly. "It's dark." The judge leaned forward. "You're wearing the same visor in court, Mrs. M?" A ripple of laughter went through the room. Even her attorney looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. In the end, the judge granted us a 6-month restraining order. Arlene was ordered not to come within 50 feet of our property, communicate with us, or file further HOA complaints without board approval. It should have been victory. For a week, it was quiet, blissfully quiet. No letters, no cameras, no footsteps. The neighborhood actually felt normal again. Jenna and I cooked dinner with the windows open. Harper slept soundly. I started to believe it was finally over. Then one afternoon, as I was taking out the trash, I saw something fluttering on our mailbox. A single envelope. No return address. I opened it and felt my hands go cold. Inside was a single printed photo, an image of me standing in our backyard from a high angle, taken through what looked like a window. On the back, in neat handwriting, it said, "You should have stayed quiet." I must have stood on the driveway for a full minute, staring at that photo, the late afternoon sun heating the paper against my skin. It wasn't just the image itself. It was where it had been taken from. You could see the crown of my head, my shoulder, the back of the house. The angle was high, too high to be from street level. It looked like it had been shot from a second-story window. The only two houses with a clear line of sight into our backyard were Arlene's and the house on the opposite side, Tom and Karen's. Tom was retired military, quiet, mostly kept to himself. Karen baked pies for every holiday. They were the kind of people who waved when they saw you. The idea that either of them could be involved made my stomach twist. I went inside and laid the photo on the kitchen counter. Jenna was at the sink, rinsing coffee mugs. She turned, saw my face, and froze. "What happened?" I held it up. "We've got another problem." She dried her hands slowly, came closer. The color drained from her face. Where did you get this?" "It was taped to the mailbox." Her voice dropped. "That's our backyard." "Yeah," I said quietly. "And the angle, it's from up high." She covered her mouth with her hand, eyes darting toward the window. "She's watching us again, isn't she?" I nodded, throat tight. "Looks like it." I called my lawyer immediately, sent him a photo of the note. He said he'd contact the police again, but I could tell from his tone he already knew how it would go. No signature, no proof who sent it, just enough to rattle us and not enough to charge anyone. And rattled was exactly what we were. That night I couldn't relax. Every creak of the house felt amplified. I checked the locks twice, closed every curtain. Jenna sat curled on the couch, hugging her knees, her eyes constantly flicking toward the windows. Harper paced, whining, unsettled by the tension. Around midnight, I heard it again, the faint crunch of footsteps outside. I went still. Jenna whispered, "Don't." But I was already moving. I grabbed the flashlight and quietly opened the back door. The cold air slapped my face as I stepped onto the deck. Everything looked still, silent except for the low hum of crickets. Then movement. A shadow slipped between the fence posts near the side gate. I swung the flashlight beam toward it, catching a glimpse of a figure moving fast, ducking behind the shrubs. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice breaking the stillness. "Get the hell out of here!" The figure froze for a split second, then bolted toward the street. I chased them halfway across the lawn before Jenna's voice pulled me back. "Ryan, stop!" By the time I reached the curb, whoever it was had vanished. The next morning, we found muddy footprints along the fence line, and one of our side cameras smashed clean off its mount. It hadn't just fallen, it had been torn down. I gave the police the photo, the damaged camera, and the boot prints. They promised to increase patrols, but their tone was weary, like we were the neighborhood's ongoing headache. The officer even said, "You sure this isn't some teenager messing with you?" Jenna's patience snapped. "A teenager with access to our backyard from the inside of a fence that locks from the inside?" He backed off quickly after that, but we both knew how little it meant. That evening, we decided to install brighter security lights, floodlights that would turn the whole backyard into daylight if anyone came near. I also ordered 2 new cameras, this time mounted higher, out of reach. The following day, when the electrician came to help with the setup, he found something else. Near the side of the house, half hidden in the mulch bed, was a small black box about the size of a deck of cards. It had a blinking red light. "What the hell is that?" I asked. The electrician picked it up, frowned. "Looks like a GPS tracker," he said, "or maybe a wireless camera transmitter." He handed it to me, and I turned it over in my hands. There was a label on the back, no brand, just a serial number. My stomach turned over. The electrician took a step back. "You should probably call someone about that." So I did. A detective from the local PD came later that day. When I showed him the device, he raised an eyebrow. "You're sure it wasn't part of your own security system?" "Positive," I said. "It's not mine. We don't have anything like this." He nodded slowly, slipping it into an evidence bag. "We'll run the serial number. If it's transmitting, we can track who it's registered to." For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. 2 days later, he called back. "We traced the device," he said. "It's registered to a company called Metro Safe Security Systems. They sell surveillance kits, mostly to private clients." "Private clients?" I repeated. "Yeah, homeowners associations sometimes. Neighborhood watch groups." The words hit me like a punch. "So, the HOA," he hesitated. "Possibly. The client's name listed on the purchase order is Arlene M." I almost dropped the phone. "You're telling me she bought a camera system and put part of it on my property?" "That's what it looks like," the detective said. "We'll be visiting her. You'll get a report." That night, Jenna cried quietly in bed. Not from fear exactly, but exhaustion, the kind that seeps into your bones. "We moved here for peace," she whispered. "I can't even step outside without wondering if she's watching me." I didn't know what to say. I just held her hand until she fell asleep. 2 days later, the detective came by again. He looked uneasy. "We talked to her," he said. "She admitted to placing the device, said it was part of a neighborhood safety initiative. Claims she got board approval for it." "Did she?" "No," he said. "There's no record of that, but it's a civil issue. Since the camera wasn't inside your home or recording private interiors, it's not technically a criminal violation." Jenna's jaw dropped. "You're kidding." He shook his head. "You could sue for harassment or invasion of privacy, though. You've got a solid case." When he left, Jenna whispered, "She's untouchable, isn't she?" I didn't answer. That night, I drafted another complaint, this time not to the HOA, but to a local news outlet that ran a segment on community corruption. I sent them everything: the letters, the photos, the video, the device report. 3 days later, I got a reply from a reporter named Kim. "This is incredible," she wrote. "Can we interview you for a story on HOA abuse?" Jenna was hesitant. "What if it makes her angrier?" "She's already done everything short of breaking in," I said. "If we stay quiet, she wins." So we agreed. Kim came by with a camera crew that week. She filmed the house, the mailbox, the fences, and us, faces blurred, names withheld. The story aired 3 nights later. It opened with the headline, "When Your HOA Turns Against You." The footage showed our neighborhood, peaceful in daylight, with Kim's voice narrating, "One couple says their dream home turned into a surveillance nightmare when a former HOA board member began filing false reports, trespassing, and installing hidden cameras." I expected backlash. I didn't expect what came next. The morning after the broadcast, I woke to a pounding at the door. I opened it to find Ray, the HOA president, red-faced and furious, holding a folder. "You need to take that video down," he barked. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I told the truth," I said evenly. "And I have the proof." He jabbed a finger toward my chest. "Arlene's threatening legal action against the HOA for defamation. She's saying you doctored everything and used her name to smear the board. If she wins, we're all liable. And guess who your neighbors are going to blame?" Before I could respond, Jenna called from the living room, her voice tight with fear. "Ryan," she said, "come here." I followed her inside. She was pointing at the TV. The morning news was showing a live shot, our street swarming with reporters. And at the end of the driveway, visor gleaming in the sun, stood Arlene, giving an interview of her own. I felt my blood pressure spike as I saw her standing there, calm and composed like she was auditioning for Most Reasonable Citizen. Her voice came through the TV speakers, sugar sweet but cutting underneath. "I've lived in this neighborhood for almost 20 years, she was saying. "It used to be such a lovely, peaceful community until certain people moved in and started stirring up drama. They're filming neighbors, spreading lies about the HOA, and even calling the police over fabricated claims." The reporter nodded like she was eating it up. Arlene gestured toward our house, eyes glinting behind her visor. "It's heartbreaking, really. We just want to maintain our standards and safety. I've done nothing wrong." I wanted to throw something through the TV. Jenna stood frozen beside me. "She's turning this whole thing around," she whispered. "She's making us the villains." Before I could say anything, my phone started vibrating nonstop. Texts from unknown numbers, social media pings, local neighbors forwarding me screenshots from next door. Arlene had posted a long rant titled, "Beware of Problem Neighbors, HOA Harassment is Real." It was paragraphs of warped half-truths, that we'd weaponized cameras, filed frivolous lawsuits, harassed an elderly woman, and spread fake news for attention. She even uploaded a blurry screenshot of me from the news segment. My face was blurred, but the shape of our porch and the number on our mailbox weren't. "Jesus Christ," I muttered, pacing. "She's actually doing this. She's nuking our reputation." Within hours, the comments section was a disaster. Half the neighborhood was suddenly concerned about the negative attention and siding with the long-term resident. One comment said, "That couple is poison. They should move before they ruin property values." Jenna sat at the table, hands shaking as she scrolled. "This is insane. She's rallying everyone." I grabbed her phone and locked it. "Don't read that garbage. We'll fix this." But I didn't know how. That afternoon, a reporter from another outlet called asking for my comment. I told her everything again, sent her the video, the police report, even the court order. She promised to balance the narrative, but I could already tell the tide had turned. Arlene was charismatic in that specific suburban way, the kind of person who says "sweetheart" while calling the cops on your kids for sidewalk chalk. By evening, the first real-world backlash hit. Someone dumped a bag of trash on our lawn. Another neighbor, an older guy named Chuck who used to wave every morning, stood across the street shaking his head as I cleaned it up. That night, Jenna sat on the couch crying quietly. "I can't live like this anymore," she said. "Every time I look out the window, someone's staring. We didn't do anything wrong." "I know," I said softly, "but if we leave, she wins." She looked at me exhausted. Maybe winning doesn't matter anymore. We didn't sleep. At 2 a.m., I went downstairs to get water and noticed a faint light flickering outside. I peered through the blinds and saw a small drone hovering above our backyard. I froze. It wasn't high, just 30 feet up, its red light blinking. It tilted slightly, panning toward the house like it was looking. I grabbed my phone, hit record, and stepped onto the deck. The second I moved, the drone rose higher, then zipped away over the rooftops. Jenna came downstairs, bleary-eyed. "What's going on?" "There was a drone," I said, breathless. "It was watching the house." Her face went pale. "You think it was her?" "Who else?" We sent the footage to the police again, but the answer was predictable. Hard to trace unless it crashes or you catch the operator. The next morning, we found a fresh HOA letter in the mailbox. I didn't even want to open it, but Jenna insisted. It was a violation notice for unsafe drone operation over private property. They were claiming we flew it. I laughed so hard it scared Harper. She's not even trying to make sense anymore. Jenna sat down, head in her hands. "She's winning the psychological war. No one believes us, and she's making us look unhinged." I wanted to believe the law, or logic, or decency would eventually prevail. But when you live in a small neighborhood, reputation is law. Arlene had poisoned ours completely. People stopped waving. Cars slowed when they passed. By the end of that week, Peter, my lawyer, called with a weary sigh. "You should know," he said. "She filed a counterclaim, defamation, emotional distress, and harassment. She's trying to get the restraining order lifted." I gripped the phone. "On what grounds?" "She's claiming you put the camera on her property," he said, "and she's got a witness." "A witness?" "Yeah. A neighbor named Tom. Ring any bells?" My stomach dropped. Tom, the retired military guy next door. I remembered his polite nods, the small waves. "No," I whispered. "No way." Peter sighed. "I'm afraid so. His statement says he saw you tampering with the side fence line and installing a small black device." "That's impossible. I didn't even, I know," he said quickly. "We'll contest it. But she's playing the long game, Ryan. She wants to exhaust you until you break." He was right. The letters kept coming. Nonsense complaints, phantom violations, false accusations. The HOA threatened to put a lien on the house for unpaid administrative fees. It felt like drowning in paperwork while someone pressed a boot on my chest. One night, I drove around the neighborhood just to clear my head. I noticed Arlene's house still immaculate, glowing under soft porch lights. Through her window, I saw her silhouette sitting at a desk, her head tilted toward something, a computer screen maybe. She was typing, slow and deliberate. When she turned for a brief second, I caught her face illuminated by blue light. She was smiling. I went home shaking. Jenna met me at the door. "Where were you?" "I think she's keeping files," I said. "On us, maybe on everyone." Jenna frowned. "You mean, like a dossier?" "Yeah, I saw her computer. She's building something. Maybe evidence. Maybe blackmail." Jenna's lips trembled. "Ryan, we can't keep living next to her." "I know." That weekend we started quietly packing, just a few boxes in case we decided to leave fast. It felt wrong, unfair, like we were surrendering to insanity, but the stress was eating us alive. Then on Sunday morning, a police cruiser pulled up in front of our house again. 2 officers got out. I went outside, heart pounding. "Mr. Landry," one of them said, "we received a report of a violent altercation at this address." "What?" I said. "There's been no—" Before I could finish, Jenna came outside, confusion all over her face. The officer's radio crackled. "Caller states male resident is aggressive and threatening self-harm." I went cold. "She swatted us." The officer frowned. "Excuse me?" "It's fake," I said, voice shaking. "You're here because my neighbor wants to ruin us." They searched the house anyway. "Protocol," they said. Afterward, they apologized and left. But by then, every single neighbor had come outside, watching from their porches. Arlene stood among them, arms folded, visor tilted just so. And as the police drove away, she smiled at me, a slow, satisfied smile. That night, Jenna packed the rest of her clothes into a suitcase. "I can't do this anymore," she said quietly. "You can stay and fight her if you want, but I'm done." I didn't stop her. I just watched through the window as she drove away, headlights disappearing into the dark. When I turned back toward the house, I saw it through the blinds. Across the street, in her upstairs window, the faint glow of a phone camera recording. The days after Jenna left passed in a blur, empty and heavy at once. The house felt wrong without her. Too quiet, too still, the air thick with things unsaid. I kept expecting to hear her footsteps on the stairs, her voice calling from the kitchen. Instead, I woke to silence and went to bed the same way. Arlene must have known Jenna was gone, because the next morning she struck again. I was sitting at my desk trying to focus on a spreadsheet for work, when my phone buzzed with a new notification, an HOA violation email. I clicked it out of reflex, already bracing myself. Unsightly exterior clutter, porch items in violation of aesthetic standards. Attached was a photo of my front porch, my coffee mug, a pair of muddy boots, in a cardboard box I'd left near the door. Nothing outrageous, but the timestamp made my stomach drop. 5:43 a.m. Someone had walked up to my porch at dawn. Again. And of course, the only person awake and obsessive enough to do that was her. I slammed my laptop shut and paced the living room, breathing hard. I'd tried every legal avenue, reported her to the police, even gone to the media. She didn't care. Nothing scared her because she'd built this twisted little kingdom where everyone believed she was right. When the fear finally gave way to anger, I did something impulsive. I marched across the street. She opened the door before I even knocked, like she'd been waiting for it. She didn't look surprised. If anything, she looked amused. "Well, good morning," she said lightly. "Out for your daily confrontation?" I forced myself to speak evenly. "You've gone too far, Arlene. You're trespassing, you're stalking, and I have everything on video. I don't know what your problem is with me, but it ends now." She tilted her head. "Problem?" she said sweetly. "You're the one making this a problem. You moved here and decided the rules didn't apply to you." "You vandalized my property," I snapped. "You stole from me." Her smile didn't waver. "I corrected violations." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "Do you enjoy this? Making people miserable?" Her eyes hardened. "I enjoy order," she said, "and this neighborhood was orderly until you brought chaos. Cameras, news crews, police cars in the street. People talk, Ryan. They don't like you here." I wanted to scream, but instead I said, "You're sick." Her smile faltered for the first time. "Careful," she said quietly. "Words like that can come back to haunt you." I turned and walked away before I said something I'd regret. But when I reached my porch and looked back, she was still standing there, watching me, her dog sitting obediently beside her. That night I couldn't stop replaying the encounter. The calmness in her voice, the way she twisted everything until I was the problem. Narcissists have a way of making you doubt your own reality, and I could feel it happening, piece by piece. Still, part of me wondered, why me? What did I ever do to make her target me so obsessively? The answer came the next day. I got a call from Kim, the reporter who'd originally covered our story. "Hey," she said, her tone hesitant. "I thought you should know. We've been contacted by your HOA. They're threatening legal action against the station unless we retract the segment." "Of course they are," I muttered. "Let me guess. Arlene's behind it?" Kim hesitated. "It's not just her. There's something else. I can't confirm this officially, but one of my sources said she has connections to the property management company that runs your HOA." "What kind of connections?" "She used to work for them," Kim said, "for almost 15 years. She wasn't just on your HOA board. She trained new ones. She knows the system inside and out. That's how she's getting away with all this." I sat in stunned silence. "So she's been grooming HOAs? Like building her own little network?" Kim exhaled. "Something like that. And there are other complaints, not just from your neighborhood. People in 2 other communities mentioned her name in harassment cases." My jaw clenched. "You think she does this everywhere she goes?" "Looks that way," Kim said. "She gets on the board, builds control, and when anyone pushes back, she weaponizes the system. It's power for her." For the first time, everything made sense. It was never personal. Or maybe it always was, but in a broader way. I wasn't her first victim. I was just the latest. That night, I decided to fight back properly. I went through every file, every letter, every photo she'd ever sent. I scanned them all into a folder labeled HOA War. I printed copies for the lawyer, for Kim, for the police. I even set up a motion sensor inside the fence line. If she stepped foot near my property again, I'd know instantly. Around midnight, the sensor went off. My phone buzzed. A red alert flashed on the screen. Motion detected. Backyard. I opened the live feed. There she was, standing by the fence, a flashlight in one hand, clipboard in the other. Her visor glinted in the glow. She wasn't sneaking this time. She was calmly inspecting my yard like she belonged there. I hit record, grabbed my keys, and called 911. By the time the police arrived, she was gone, but I showed them the footage. The officer whistled low under his breath. "She's bold," he said. "She's insane," I corrected. He nodded. "We'll file another report. That restraining order's still active. She's in violation." I watched them drive off, then stood in the backyard alone, staring at the fence. The flashlight beam from her inspection still burned in my mind. The next morning, I woke to find my car vandalized. Both tires on the driver's side slashed, a thin line carved down the paint. On the windshield, tucked under the wiper, was a piece of paper. "Liars don't belong here." No signature, but it didn't need one. That was the breaking point. I called my lawyer, my family, and finally Jenna. "I'm done," I told her. "You were right. We're leaving." She didn't sound surprised, just relieved. "Good," she said softly. "Come stay with me until you find somewhere else." The next day, I called a moving company. As I started boxing up the last of our things, I noticed something in the window across the street. Arlene's blinds were open, and she was standing there watching. When our eyes met, she raised her phone and took a photo. Slow, deliberate, like she was documenting my surrender. And that's when I realized something I should have seen all along. She didn't want me fined, or embarrassed, or even gone. She wanted control. And the only thing worse than staying was giving her the satisfaction of knowing she'd won. So I didn't wave. I didn't yell. I just stared back, held her gaze, and smiled. That night, as I packed the last box, I found something wedged behind the couch. A tiny black square, the same kind as the tracker the police had found in my yard weeks ago. This one was on the inside. I sat there for a long time, staring at it, realizing what it meant. Arlene hadn't just been watching from across the street. She'd been inside my house. I don't remember standing up. One second I was staring at that tiny square in my palm, and the next I was tearing through the house, checking every room, every corner, every window latch. I don't even know what I thought I'd find. A footprint, a handprint, a shadow left behind. But the house was still. Too still. When I finally stopped moving, my breathing was ragged. I dropped to my knees and looked at the tracker again. Same make, same little blinking red light as the one the police had confiscated before. Except this one wasn't hidden in the yard. It had been inside, tucked behind the couch where I sat every evening. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. I called Detective Monroe, the one who'd handled the previous report. He picked up after a few rings, his voice groggy. "Yeah, Mr. Landry. She's been in my house." A pause. "Say again?" "She's been inside," I said. "I found another tracker. It's the same kind as before, but it was behind my couch, inside the living room." He sighed. "All right, don't touch it. I'll send a patrol out." "No," I said sharply. "I want you to come." There was a silence that told me he heard the edge in my voice. "I'll be there," he said. It took 30 minutes, but it felt like 3 hours. I stood by the front window the whole time, keeping my eyes fixed on Arlene's house. Her blinds were open again, but she wasn't visible. That somehow felt worse. When Monroe arrived, I met him at the door and handed him the tracker. He turned it over in his gloved hand, studying it. "Same model, all right," he murmured. "You sure this wasn't part of your security system?" I almost laughed. "I'm sure." He nodded and started walking through the house, careful, methodical. "No signs of forced entry," he said after a while. "Could she have had a key?" "No," I said automatically. Then I hesitated. The previous owners had left a spare set of keys when we bought the place. They'd said there was one missing, probably misplaced years ago. I'd meant to replace all the locks when we moved in, but between unpacking and the constant chaos with Arlene, I never got around to it. Monroe looked at me. "You didn't change the locks, did you?" I rubbed a hand over my face. "No." He exhaled slowly. "That's how she's getting in." I felt sick. She's violating the restraining order, he added. And this time it's criminal. I'll open a full investigation. Do you think she'll stop? I asked quietly. He gave me a look that was both sympathetic and tired. No, not until she's made an example of you. Or until we make one of her. He left an hour later with the tracker bagged as evidence. I rechecked every lock in the house. Then finally, called a locksmith to rekey the doors that night. I didn't even care what it cost. When I went to bed, it wasn't really sleep. I just lay there in the dark, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator, the occasional pop of the wood frame settling. Every sound was suspect. Every flicker of shadow felt alive. At 3:14 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Another motion alert. I opened the feed, heart hammering. It wasn't Arlene this time. It was her dog, one of the schnauzers. It was standing in the middle of my front yard, staring directly at the camera, leash dragging behind it. Then, as if on cue, a second shadow appeared behind it. Arlene. She was crouched low, calling softly to the dog, glancing around. She reached for the leash, straightened up, and turned toward the camera. For a split second, our eyes met through the lens. She smiled. Then she lifted her hand and placed something on my porch before walking away. I didn't go outside right away. I waited until sunrise, every instinct screaming at me not to open that door. When I finally did, the morning air hit me like a slap. There was an envelope sitting neatly on the welcome mat. No name, no address, just my initials handwritten across the front. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Photos of me in the yard, me taking out the trash, me through the kitchen window, talking on the phone, Jenna and I grilling in the backyard months ago, even one of me asleep on the couch. My knees nearly buckled. At the very back of the stack was a final photo, one of her, standing on my porch in the dark, her hand on the door handle. The timestamp? The night before. That's when I called Peter, my lawyer, and told him I was done. Done fighting, done waiting, done pretending I could outlast her. I want to sell the house, I said. He hesitated. You're sure? Absolutely. He didn't try to talk me out of it. Within a week, the real estate sign went up. The house wasn't even fully packed yet, but I didn't care. I'd take the loss if it meant getting away. Word must have spread fast because 2 days later, Arlene showed up on the sidewalk again. She didn't come onto the property. Maybe she was trying to look innocent in case the police were watching, but she stopped right at the edge of the curb. Moving out already? She called, voice bright. I ignored her. She smiled wider. I told you the neighborhood wasn't a good fit for you. Something in me broke. I walked to the fence, gripping the wood. You win, I said quietly. Is that what you wanted to hear? Her expression softened in mock sympathy. Oh, sweetie, there are no winners. Just people who follow the rules, and those who don't belong. She turned and walked away before I could respond. That night, as I was boxing up the last of my things, I heard a knock. Not at the front door, at the back. I froze. The knocking came again, slow, deliberate, 3 times. I picked up my phone, hit record on the security app, and approached the back door. Through the frosted glass, I saw the faint outline of someone standing just beyond the porch light. When I flipped the switch, the bulb blinked once, then died. My hand trembled as I reached for the knob, but I didn't open it. Instead, I whispered, "Go away." Silence. Then a soft female voice, muffled through the door. "Don't forget to forward your mail." Every hair on my body stood on end. When I finally worked up the courage to look through the peephole, the porch was empty. I didn't sleep after that. I just sat in the living room with all the lights on until the sun came up, clutching Harper close, waiting for morning. By noon, the moving truck arrived. I loaded what I could and left the rest. Furniture, dishes, the TV. I didn't care. I just wanted to be gone. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror one last time. Arlene was standing at the end of her driveway, visor gleaming, arms folded. And as I turned the corner, she raised her phone, aimed it at my car, and took one final photo. It's been 8 months since I left that neighborhood, and I still catch myself checking the window before turning off the lights. The human mind doesn't just forget what it's like to be watched. It buries it somewhere deep, and then, when you least expect it, while you're rinsing a plate or walking the dog at night, it digs its way back out. I live in an apartment now, third floor, gated building, cameras in the hallways that aren't mine. The landlord handles maintenance, and the only association I have to deal with is the group text from my neighbors about who left laundry in the dryer. Peace, in other words, a fragile, careful kind of peace. Jenna never came back. We talk sometimes in small ways. Birthday texts, a few, "I hope you're doing okay" messages. She met someone new. I'm glad for her, truly. We didn't fall out of love because of each other. We fell out of love because fear took up all the space in the room. I wish I could say the story ended neatly after I moved out, but things like this never do. 3 weeks after I left, Peter called me. "You might want to sit down," he said. I did. The HOA was dissolved. I blinked. "What?" "Management dropped them," he said. "Apparently Arlene overstepped again. She filed a false insurance claim against a neighbor, and the property management company, her old employer, cut ties with the entire association. There's an investigation into financial misconduct. It's bad." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He went on. "The police executed a search warrant on her house. They found multiple hard drives, cameras, and folders full of photos, hundreds of them. Not just you, nearly everyone on that street. She was keeping detailed logs, trash schedules, car movements, packages delivered. She even had records of when people mowed their lawns." I closed my eyes. "So it wasn't just me?" "No," Peter said quietly. "But you were the one she fixated on after the restraining order, the one she wanted to make an example of." He paused, then added, "They found a spare key to your house among her things." That one hit harder than anything else. Proof that every fear, every sleepless night, every shadow I thought I imagined, it had all been real. She was charged with trespassing, harassment, and unlawful surveillance. I never went to the hearing. I didn't need to see her face again. But Peter said she stood there, visor gone, hands trembling as the charges were read. For the first time, she looked small. I thought I'd feel triumphant when I heard that. I didn't. I just felt tired. A few weeks later, Kim, the reporter, called. She said the story had gone national. The HOA from hell, they were calling it. She wanted to know if I'd do a follow-up interview. I told her no. I'd had enough of cameras pointed at me, but I did tell her one thing before hanging up. People like her, they hide behind the rules. That's how they get power. They turn order into obsession and call it morality. And once you give them that kind of authority, they never stop until they own you. She said that was a hell of a quote. I told her she could use it, just not my name. Since then, I've tried to build a life again. I go to work. I take Harper on long walks through the park where nobody knows me. I read. I sleep better mostly. But there are moments, small ones, that still make me freeze. The sound of shoes crunching outside my window late at night. The reflection of a phone camera in a passing car. Once, a visor on a woman across the street made my chest seize before I realized she was just trimming her hedges. The damage she left behind isn't visible. It's the kind you carry quietly, learning to live around it. A few months ago, I got a letter forwarded from the old address. No return name, no HOA stamp. Just a folded sheet of paper inside, blank except for one sentence written in neat cursive. Order restored. I called Peter immediately and he said not to worry. It was probably some old document from the case. Maybe a prank. But deep down, I knew that handwriting. Still, I didn't report it. I burned the letter and watched the edges curl into ash in my kitchen sink. Then I poured water over it until nothing was left but black pulp. Sometimes I think about that street, the tidy lawns, the sound of sprinklers, the way the sun used to hit the porch in the morning. I think about the neighbors who smiled politely and pretended not to see what was happening. And I think about Arlene, the woman who turned a neighborhood into a stage, her life's purpose tied to keeping everyone else in line. I wonder if she'll ever understand what she really lost. Control isn't peace, it's poison. It turns everything it touches into something small and mean and frightened. And I refuse to live small anymore. The last box from that house is still sealed in my closet. I've never opened it. Sometimes I think I should, just to prove to myself that I'm not scared of what's inside. But every time I reach for it, I stop. Not out of fear, just out of recognition. Some things are better left closed.